Do you ever ask yourself how we got to where we are in Minnesota regarding illegal immigrants? I do. The events of the past year have made this a line of questions that I simply cannot ignore. Somehow, over the past 20 years or so, we have allowed millions of people to immigrate into the United States illegally. Now, whether you or I think that these are bad people or good people, the fact is that our national sovereignty has been compromised. Control of our national borders is a fundamental responsibility of any sovereign people. And we are living with the results every day. The efforts by the current administration seem both a day late and a dollar short. Here's my bottom line up front. We are here because we the people have simply chosen to ignore the real issues involved in the topic of immigration for almost our entire national history. Now, I think this may be because we are a nation of immigrants. Every one of us who is not a member of a Native American tribe is either an immigrant or the descendant of an immigrant. You know, even those who were forcibly brought to this country are immigrants. And we know it. So I think that in general, many of us, perhaps most of us, see porous borders that welcome immigrants as part of our national culture. I think we see this because we love and honor the parents and grandparents, or perhaps earlier ancestors, who made the journey and immigrated to the United States. But many of us are more pragmatic or driven by concerns about culture or employment or rule of law, and have started to think, whoa, not so porous. See, the result of our national malaise regarding immigration, our widespread indifference, is that our immigration laws and rules and regulations are legitimately a hodgepodge that reflect periods of openness and periods of fear, periods of open borders and periods of closed borders. And in this area, our constitutional separation of powers between the federal and the state governments, while clear, kind of makes things more difficult for people who are generally indifferent. By this I mean what the Constitution says that establishes the separation of state and federal powers. The 10th Amendment. Boy, when was the last time you thought about the 10th Amendment to the Constitution? Here it is. The powers not delegated to the United States, in other words, the central federal government, by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people. See, the expectation there was that the people would then identify which powers they would enumerate or provide to the states, with all the remaining powers resident within the people themselves. You know, there is not a whole lot of discussion of this fundamental pillar of our U.S. constitutional democracy, other than some general statements and the fact that the Constitution would not have been ratified without this amendment alongside the Bill of Rights. Our founders did not want this separation to be forgotten. Alexander Hamilton focused on national power, and his Federalist paper essays leaned towards strong federal authority rather than emphasizing the powers reserved to the states. Madison's arguments, however, consistently emphasized the limitations on federal power and the strong state sovereignty over their domains. Madison's terms presaged the 10th Amendment and were intended to ensure the states retain a significant role in the ratification and the operation of this federalized system, ensuring states had general independence and to help ensure that sovereignty ultimately rests with you and me, the people, who then delegate specific powers to the state governments and some specific powers to the federal government. See, Madison envisioned a system where the federal government operates within their enumerated powers, leaving residual authority to the states, which were also enumerated, leaving the majority of powers to the people, which is exactly what the 10th Amendment codified during the ratification process of the U.S. Constitution. The courts, as the final arbiter of the rights of the states versus the rights of the federal government, have consistently determined that the Constitution grants the federal government complete power over immigration and national border control, and actually prevents the states from having control of their borders between states. For the federal government, this is done through Article 1, Section 8, the Commerce Clause and the Naturalization Clause of the Constitution. It's there in writing. Courts have determined that states may cooperate, but cannot override federal jurisdiction for those national borders. They cannot obstruct federal enforcement of the national borders or within the confines of those national borders. While states retain broad police powers under the 10th Amendment, within the confines of the individual states, border control, especially national border control, national enforcement of borders, are primarily plenary federal domains. States can assist under federal direction, but cannot create independent enforcement regimes that conflict with federal law. Unfortunately, concepts and state laws regarding sanctuary cities or additional enforcement beyond federal rules obstruct federal responsibility. And as we see now, nearly every day, many states have established rules and laws that are largely intended to defeat federal laws established to control and prevent illegal immigration. Those federal laws are within the authority of the Congress to enact. I have question about executive orders that have tended to override congressional laws, as much as I do about sanctuary cities and other state laws that would preempt congressional laws and regulations. But here's where you and I play in this. That the state laws have not been vigorously taken to court and overturned is simply because you and I have lacked the will to do that monumental task, to take those state laws to task in our courts. Had we demanded that, had the courts ruled and determined that the idea of sanctuary cities, sanctuary states, was anathema to the intent and the words of the Constitution, the dilemma we now face and the upheaval we see in Minnesota and other states would not have developed. But we didn't. Oh well.